When Madison Taylor boarded Meridian Skies, Flight 457, she was at the apex of her career. An influential tech mogul, a lauded philanthropist, and a first-class traveler accustomed to the finest the world had to offer. She had fought tooth and nail to build an empire from nothing but grit, resilience, and a refusal to accept defeat. Yet, before the plane would land, Madison would be dragged from her seat, stripped of her dignity, and cast out of the very elite circle she had fought so hard to enter, all because someone decided she no longer fit their narrative. But what they didn't realize was this. They had picked the wrong woman to cross. This wasn't just about a seat. It was about control, about power. It was about the dangerous moment when injustice is allowed to flourish unchecked. And by the time the dust settled, careers would crumble, reputations would burn, and the world would witness Madison Taylor turning the tables in a way no one could have foreseen. Madison eased into seat 1A, her fingers tracing the smooth lapel of her tailored charcoal blazer. The scent of leather upholstery blended with freshly brewed espresso, filling the cabin with the aroma of luxury. Meridian Skies' first-class cabin was a sanctuary, private, serene, and dignified. But her moment of peace was fleeting. The shift in the atmosphere was palpable, like a current of cold air sneaking through a sealed window. Across the aisle in seat 2C sat Nathaniel Grant. He watched her with a gleam in his pale blue eyes, one she recognized far too well. Condescension barely veiled behind a smirk. Well, Nathaniel murmured, the corner of his mouth twitching with amusement. Didn't expect to see you here, Madison. She met his gaze with practiced indifference. Airlines don't typically consult you when they book their first-class passengers, do they? His chuckle was low, sardonic. Seems their standards have slipped. Before Madison could reply, a flight attendant approached. Ma'am, may I see your boarding pass again? The question came from Clara Jennings, a woman whose smile was as tight as the bun pinned at the back of her head. Madison's brow arched. I scanned it at the gate. Is there a problem? Clara's expression remained neutral, but Madison noticed the tension in her jaw, the stiffness in her shoulders. Over Clara's shoulder, near the cockpit door, stood Captain Aaron Caldwell. His arms were folded across his chest, his gaze unreadable. Just a routine check, Clara said smoothly. There's been a technical hiccup with the manifest. Madison wasn't buying it. She handed Clara her phone, the digital boarding pass displayed on the screen. Clara took the device, her fingers tightening almost imperceptibly as she examined it. Then she handed it back. Everything seems in order, she said, but her tone lacked any conviction. As Clara walked away, Madison's eyes swept the cabin. Across from her, an older woman, Helen Davenport, a seasoned traveler who radiated wisdom and no-nonsense authority, leaned in slightly. I've seen this sort of thing before, Helen murmured. Don't let them rattle you. Madison offered a thin but sincere smile. They picked the wrong woman for that. But Helen's warning lingered in Madison's mind like a splinter. Minutes later, Clara returned. This time, she wasn't alone. A second attendant, Daniel Reyes, flanked her right shoulder. MS. Taylor, Clara said crisply. It appears there's been an issue with your seat assignment. Madison didn't flinch. You just confirmed my seat was fine. Clara's tone grew clipped. It seems your seat has been double booked. We'll need you to move while we sort it out. Madison's gaze sharpened. Move where? You mean economy, don't you? A chuckle came from Nathaniel Grant. He lounged back in his seat, voice dripping with mockery. Guess your lucky streak ran out, huh? Before Madison could fire back, Helen rose from her seat. This is outrageous, Helen declared. Why is she the only one being asked to move? Why wasn't this sorted before we took off? Daniel shot Clara a worried glance, but Clara stood firm. Mrs. Davenport, please return to your seat. We don't want to escalate things. Madison took a deep breath. Two choices lay before her. Comply and let them humiliate her or stand her ground. But Madison Taylor had never been one to back down. Without a word, she reached into her carry-on and withdrew her phone. I need to make a call, she said evenly. Clara's lips twitched into something resembling a smirk. There's no reception at this altitude. Madison turned the screen toward her, displaying a document. Meridian Skies investor documentation. Proof she was not just a passenger, but a shareholder in the very airline trying to oust her. Clara's smirk faltered. Daniel's face lost color. Even Nathaniel's smug expression wavered for a fraction of a second. "Would you care to explain to me again," Madison said quietly, "how my seat was accidentally double-booked?" The cabin intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Caldwell's voice filled the space. "We're cruising at 38,000 feet. However, we need to address a potential security concern." Madison's pulse quickened. "We've identified a passenger whose behavior has raised questions," Caldwell continued. "As a precaution, we are conducting an internal security review." Whispers rippled through the first-class cabin. Madison could feel the passengers' stares. "They're setting me up," she thought grimly. Clara reappeared, this time accompanied by a man in a dark uniform. Air Marshal David Harlow. "MS. Taylor," Clara said in a tone thick with artificial concern, "we need you to come with us." "Go where?" Madison demanded. "What's this about?" "Routine security evaluation," Harlow said flatly. Nathaniel shifted in his seat, stretching out his legs as if settling in to enjoy the show. "Told you," he drawled. "First class isn't for everyone." Madison's hands clenched into fists at her sides. No, this wasn't security protocol. This was a calculated effort to take her down publicly. But she was done playing by their rules. She rose slowly, deliberately, her eyes locking onto the air marshal. "A security evaluation," she echoed, voice calm but dangerous. "That's an interesting term for it." Harlow remained stone-faced. "It's protocol." Madison let out a dry laugh. "No, it's a power play." She angled her phone toward him again, the Meridian Skies investor credentials glowing brightly on the screen. "Now, Marshal," she said smoothly, "do you really want to be responsible for forcibly removing a shareholder from her legally purchased seat? On what evidence?" A flimsy accusation that wouldn't hold up in court. For the first time, Harlow hesitated. He hadn't expected a fight, certainly not one this precise. But Madison wasn't finished. She turned to the cabin, her voice rising just enough to carry. "Everyone here is witnessing this," she said. "An airline that prides itself on valuing premium customers is attempting to eject one of their own, despite clear documentation that I belong here." Her eyes swept the rows of passengers. "If it can happen to me, it can happen to any of you." A murmur began, quiet at first but growing. Helen Davenport stood again. "She's right," Helen said firmly. "This isn't about security. This is about deciding who deserves to belong and who doesn't." Heads nodded. Several passengers took out their phones, cameras aimed squarely at the unfolding scene. At Madison, at Harlow, at Clara and Daniel. Madison returned her focus to the air marshal. "Well," she asked. Harlow's jaw tightened. Public scrutiny, legal liability, and common sense all weighed heavy on him. "We're staying in our seat," Harlow said quietly. Clara stiffened. "Captain Caldwell already made the call," she insisted. Madison smiled, slow and cold. "Then I suggest you call him back," she replied. "Because the moment anyone lays a hand on me, this video," she gestured toward the raised phones, "goes viral. And Meridian Skies will never recover from the fallout." A heavy silence blanketed the cabin. Then Harlow exhaled and took a step back. "You're staying," he repeated, his tone final. Madison sat down again, smoothing the fabric of her blazer as if nothing had happened. Clara exchanged a glance with Daniel, both of them realizing the game was over. They had underestimated her, and now they would pay the price.